All right, thank you for staying with us. Let's see what you're saying online and try and squeeze in as many of them because there's so much feedback coming through. Let's put them up and see. Joy says, I graduated in 2014 with a degree in BCom, banking and finance, got a job that gave me a salary of 4,000.
My goodness.
6 months on, I got a job earning 15,000. A year later, I decided to change my mind from an employee to an employer. I put more efforts in gaining skills other than earning a salary. Last year, I had to quit my job. I opened up a general M-Pesa shop. So far, so good, because I will be needing an employee soon. Believe me, employment is not all we need to ensure that our education is in use.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Joy. You don't say who you are, but you say I'm an agribusiness management graduate rather, and a CPAK. We don't have any jobs online is what you was, I'm guessing you to say, to our expertise. In my county, Baringo, the majority of recurrent expenditure goes to health employees and executive. Nearly all employees in agriculture have and are retiring. No plan in place to recruit. And we expect agriculture to be the backbone of this economy. Majority of the accountants in Kenya are not satisfied. No, no, no.
CPAK. Oh wow. Damaris says, I'm a graduate with BSc Statistics too. I graduated in 2017. Getting even an internship is hard if you don't have someone in the respective organization. They ask of experience for you to secure an internship. I wonder where a fresh graduate can gain experience from other than internship opportunities.
Okay. Robert, you say, I hold a degree in economics, mathematics, and from Maseno University. I volunteered working at the National Treasury for almost 2 years to enhance my work experience. I delivered very well, recommended, and still, when I go to interviews, I get regret letters due to a few opportunity and connections by my competitors. Nepotism and corruption also blocking the best candidates to get a job. Imagine 2 years. All right, there's one more feedback right here. This is Kevin. You say, Joseph is right, by the way. I did a BS in statistics, second honors, upper division. In fact, I'm halfway done with my master's in monitoring and evaluation. 2 weeks ago, I failed an interview because I wasn't competent in Python. Now I'm actually confused. I should have gone for Python and not the master's program. In school, I was taught R. I'm sure you know what that is. Most organizations are using Python. This is what you had said earlier on. Yes. We have Joseph here. Joseph did apply mathematics.
What is Python?
Program languages that they use. Joseph, we have Joseph with us here. He did applied mathematics and he's pursuing an MBA in biostatistics, but he's currently a hawker. Joseph, if you got a job today in what you're studying, but that job paid you 30K, and it's still the same job, just like hawking, that is putting food on your table in this economy. Is it fair, and would you take it?
It would not be fair, given that, you see, education is an investment. When you put up a shop there, put some stock, you expect some returns. Now, if the returns are less than what you are expecting, it would be difficult for you to survive. You see, I would only take it if it would add my experience in my profession. If it is in line with what I see, like it will add more knowledge to me. But if it is not adding experience to you, it would be a waste of time, because you realize you have to be in the market and you have to have what they want. So if I'm going to a place, they're giving me the 15,000 I'm getting from my hawking, and all I do is maybe something different, very different from statistics, I think it would be a waste of time. But I would really love, even if it was in an internship, like they're saying online, even getting an internship is very hard. Okay, you are required so many things for you to get the internship. And you see, like statistics, it's not just something you will go in a supermarket and start gaining the skills. You need to go into a research institution. You'll have more knowledge there. So you find that they don't even have vacancies for internships.
Okay. Yeah. Janet, here's the thing. Even as we're discussing the merging of universities, why is it that some of our universities in Kenya either still are offering unpopular courses, or courses that are backdated, or still courses that are very relevant today, but how they're being taught and the courses within that degree is 10, 20 years ago?
But it's a combination of many factors, but one of the most immediate factors that we would want to deal with are factors really within our immediate control. And I would say that we have a commission for university education that is supposed to do the regulating, so that we shouldn't be complaining at all that someone has set up a course, that they're offering courses that are not suitable, that are not proper, that that should not be a complaint. If that then becomes a complaint, then we pick the problem with the Commission for University Education, because really we have so many institutions. During break we were trying to find out what this one stands for, what the other stands for, and at some point as Kenyans we really think that we can solve our problem by throwing an institution, or we have this problem, let's create this body and we think and we think that we have solved the problem. No, we have not. Let's first demand accountability from the institutions that are there. There are those that have to be merged with others, because you realize that you have one institution but it cannot work because some of the information that it wants to use as baseline lies with another institution, so you have to write a letter or travel there to go and have meetings. Then you start having these quarrels that this is my domain, this is my role. So I think there's that confusion that has to be sorted out. And the other thing is about funding of the universities. Sometimes probably for universities to be able to equip themselves as to be able to teach, they would require resources. It's still an accountability problem, because what have universities really done with all the amount of money that we see? There are so many courses. It has been going up. Yeah. So there are so many courses that are being, or parallel programs, this certificate, the other diploma, and so on. So there is that accountability problem that first has to be answered. And finally, where do you get this inspiration, for example, to graduate 600 people with this? I mean, what is the relationship and what is the role of planning? For example, the Ministry of Planning. Do you give data that, for example, we need this expertise in this country? Is that what informs universities to develop new programs? Or universities just today begin because a certain lecturer has that specialization and they want to form a class and they're looking for money? Those are the issues. And I want to really speak to the professor and tell him that please move on. What we need to do, we do not need 80s universities in this country. I think we need fewer institutions that are offering quality.
Right.
And then all those resources going to those other things can strengthen the Tibet and the middle level institutions. I really, really feel pain that Kenya Polytechnic is no longer Kenya Polytechnic. I have not reconciled with that. How do you destroy an entire polytechnic that was doing so well and make it a university?
And speaking of quality, the fact that JKUAT was put on the spot after making sure 118 graduates graduated in one graduation, PhD holders rather. How do we begin to reform our PhD sector?
And as I said here, sometimes we victimize the wrong people. Because as they sat and they went through their education and finally somebody told them that you have qualified, there were institutions that sat and watched. The universities collected money from these people. So there are more accountability problems. And what I have seen in this country is that there are people who have made themselves into a techno group, so that you cannot comment into this because you are not. You know that kind of, and they're turning out to be the biggest mess in this country. That you cannot comment because you do not have a PhD. No, we are going to comment. We are going to tell you that this is shoddy job. It is shoddy work. What the universities should be doing is helping us with all these challenges. Where is the research that is telling us that this is the direction that we need to go, with our education? And it is not lost on me that there are laws that have been made that have led us to where we are. For example, as the PS was saying, today the minister may not have a lot of leeway with the universities. Why? Because they are independent organizations. How do you explain that for you to become, there's a law that has been made that you can only enter here when you are a professor? Let me ask, is that the only expertise that is needed to manage an institution? No, we need IT experts, probably at even diploma level, to come into that Senate and really give you the practical bits of life. We need we need management as an expertise in that institution. So I think there's a few other things that we must be able to undo. And at this point is where we say that stakeholders really have to support the CS to reform the university sector. If we will not sit here 10 years down the line with such a young Kenyan looking up to us for direction, and then we really don't know what to do.
Amos?
I totally agree with Janet. I think this country, the maximum it needs are 10 universities. the maximum, including private universities. Let's stop this craze of commercializing everything. I think there is a fundamental challenge in terms of how we define even growth, how we define what factors of production are. And there are just three: capital, labor, and entrepreneurship. Unfortunately, the greatest shortage that the third world faces, including Kenya, is a shortage of entrepreneurship. What we are seeing happening is not, let me use the normal language, entrepreneurship. This is not entrepreneurship. This is what we call scavenging. This is what we call wizi na ulagai. You are not in it for the sake of value. That is why this country has more than 450,000 private companies. If you ask them what they do, they have no idea. Why are they doing it is what we call investment, what we call in investment and finance as technical enterprises and not fundamental enterprises. They are not built for sustainability. What is a company that is built for sustainability? Look at the Colgate, look at the Toyotas, look at the Coca-Colas that have existed for more and more and more and more decades and centuries. But these kind of businesses that you see that run all these kind of scandals that you see all over. Jesus was working on water enterprises, Cups and Plates Business Limited. These things that as soon as they are through with swindling government, they have collapsed. This is not the way to grow an economy. Yeah. Unfortunately, this madness has also stepped into our universities. We have to relook at the Universities Act, where the problem started in 2012. Mm-hmm. What happened that we were delegating responsibility to universities and agencies that have no capacity, that are riddled by corruption, that do not want to be accountable? And I agree with Janet. These people don't have to be asked questions. When you ask a question, you ask, do you have a PhD? As if the person who gave the first PhD also had a PhD. Do you know that the person who made them professors at first was not even a professor? They do not want to be held accountable. And that is the reason why our vice chancellors are running universities like village polytechnics. They forget that these are institutions which are supposed to uphold certain ethos. When you just look at three universities, University of Nairobi, Kenyatta University, Moi University, have already consumed more than 40% of the entire enrollment. Why would you create a university 5 kilometers away from Moi University? Why would you create a university 2 kilometers away from the University of Nairobi, just across next to the city square? You want to call it a university? I think these are questions that we need to ask ourselves. Yeah. What specifically do we want to get out of it? Mm-hmm. So I think universities have also to be more candid. Mm-hmm. We have to go back and fix those institutions. Mm-hmm. And there's no way where there are accountability issues. We just have to take it where it belongs. Yeah. You have not played your part. University councils have not played their part. The vice chancellors who have become rogue because professors in the Senate cannot ask them questions. Why can't they ask them questions? It is because there is no course you do in this country, or there is no study you do to become a professor. A professor is simply a promotion. So we have vice chancellors who promote the yes people to become professors, and that's why we know, even in this country, they are professors. And there are professors who have been made to become professors. They have nothing on their name. Somebody is called a professor. You look at their publication, it is shoddy. It does not appear in any serious journal. And that's why we've got all these kind of 118 PhDs. Yeah. When you ask what is the name is written, Oxford, where do you go to pay? A local bank in a certain branch on River Road. It cannot be business as usual. On this one, I stand with Professor Magoha. Mm-hmm. You must crack the whip. We must start from somewhere. We must bring back order and send it to our universities. Okay. I remember what you asked one of your professors one time when one of the universities wanted to start a program, and they enrolled 100 students for a PhD program. And the vice chancellor looked at them and asked, Professor, you want to convert my university to a primary school? Because honestly, 100 for PhD, where do you secure supervisors for this program? Honestly, something must be done. And it must be done so urgently. We must do it.
Kevit, because we're talking about where to start, and Janet and Amos have talked about research. In the Tibet industry now that we're pushing for Tibet, is there research that shows, for example, how many plumbers do we need today? How many are you training? So that by the time you're leaving them, you're interconnected with the market, that you know these are the plumbers that are needed, these are the ones we're training, these are the ones we've already trained. Is this based on research, or are we just pushing another narrative again for Tibet, people to enroll in Tibet, but it's also just another gamble?
The position of government with respect to Tibet transformation is not to solely look at it from a Kenyan perspective. The reason why we're trained to international standards, in other words, our occupational standards are benchmarked internationally, is so that young people can be mobile and work with dignity throughout the world. There are tremendous opportunities with Europe, which is aging, which requires young people, parts of Asia, parts of North America. And it's absolutely critical that we're able to train to these standards so that young people are truly mobile and they're part of global opportunities. And so the emphasis is to ensure that we're internationally benchmarked first, and secondly, it's to ensure that we train on transferable skills. If you're a plumber, you can be plumbing for a hotel or an airport or any kind of industry. And so that transferability is absolutely critical so that you're able to get maximum levels of competence and capacity.
Yeah.
Efforts are being put in place to reform the entire national system. The starting point as a country is to appreciate that every young Kenyan is endowed with these traits of curiosity, creativity, resourcefulness. Every child is endowed with these traits. It's what we do as a nation to ensure that we create the value chain to encourage these traits, because this is what we need. Even today, in terms of our development needs, we need greater innovation, productivity, efficiency, and those are based on these traits of curiosity, creativity, resourcefulness, and energy. And every child is endowed with this. And so our national systems, with respect to the value chains we create, both academic as well as Tibet, technical vocational training, are there to develop these traits as we go forward. And this really is the starting point, you know, and we mustn't lose sight of it.
Okay.
All right.
And what about
it's true that fundamental issues have to be addressed in order to create these traits that bring out the best possibility in terms of their livelihood, their opportunity with respect to engaging life, and you know, the values that they feel, you know, the value of hope and purpose and greater value in terms of their contribution to our development.
But what about a parent or a student who's watching this now? What are the advantages of going to a Tibet institution, especially on the costs element? Is it subsidized? Can they get help? How do you ensure that people actually enroll? Because that has also been a very fundamental point.
Government has made every effort to realize the value of equity by promoting capitation worth 30,000 shillings and providing a HELB loan worth 40,000 shillings. Further to that, government has made an effort to reduce the fees over the last 2 years from 97,000 to 57,000 Kenya shillings per term, per year. And so the whole objective of this is to ensure that we promote equity, that students with special needs are able to attend, that women are encouraged to take up skills that were primarily meant for men, that low-income families are able to access Tibet as a means to enhancing their livelihood.
Right. All right. So last year is when this conversation of universities merging is when it actually did kick off, let alone this year when Jacob was put on the spot. But what does the merging of universities look like? Just in a nutshell, under the proposed amendment to Universities Regulation 2019, a university that wants to cause a merger will first of all have to make a request to the Commission of University Education, that's the CUE. So once the CUE has then received that commission, what it then does is that it will create a committee to conduct an audit on that university that has requested for the merger. When that audit is ready, the same council will then consider it and then pass it to the president, and the president will approve the merger or acquisition. The cabinet secretary, in this case Professor George Magoha, will then gazette it. Janet, just in a nutshell, what would probably threaten this process? A process that a lot of people have actually welcomed. So what would then threaten this process? What would slow down this process?
The biggest threat is that this same Commission for University Education is the one that supervised the existence of all those mushrooming universities. So how do we first deal with credibility issues in the first place? Because it's a matter of asking, why are we in the problem we are in? And how do we trust the institutions that have led us into that problem to get us out of that problem? When that question is answered, I have no problem. I am happy to have fewer universities, but I think that is a question that really needs to be addressed. And the first person that needs to be audited in first is that Commission for University Education. Let's ask, how did we get here? You know, how did we get here? What is the criteria that you are using that now you want to use? What other criteria do you want to use to determine that this one needs to be merged or it's not a fully fledged? What criteria does KUE want to use now that it has not been having? Do we need to have another objective, you know, another objective entity coming in? Because these are insiders. These are people who've moved from this university, then to this one, and to KUE. You move from KUE to this university. It's like I don't want to call it a cartel because the word has been used elsewhere to mean different things. But it's a cycle of the same people, and those are the questions that are coming out. So what new is KUE going to tell us that it has not told us, you know, all that time? But now, because the CS is very firm on this and the president is very firm on this, now KUE wants to pretend that it wants to be firm. I think in terms of accountability, there are a few other questions that need to be asked to that KUE.
Wow. All right.
I said earlier on, I think there are institutions that have been given a lot of latitude and they are not just doing their work. One of the most immediate things that we have to do, I think we have to repeal the Universities Act. Either take some of this power to the president or to the cabinet secretary, so that the state, which is the elder brother in governance, is the one that has been bestowed with the responsibility of carrying our aspirations. There is no way the interests of the larger society can be overridden by the private interests of a few people who sit and believe that maybe they should sit somewhere and protect an individual who could either be a vice chancellor or a particular institution. I strongly believe that we have to take back the powers to appoint to the cabinet secretary, so that we can hold the cabinet secretary to account. He can be called before parliament, he can be censored, he can be impeached by parliament. But when we have got all these powers delegated to other institutions that refuse to work, and because we have become a highly litigation country, that's why this country has more than 450,000 cases every year. And we can now delegate. I did the former Chief Justice tried one time to make joke of it. Why don't we try visiting maybe Waganga and such to solve? Because anything small, we rush to court. We cannot solve our problems.
Right.
So we need to start with, first of all, repealing the University Act. And these are the fundamental issues. Mergers and acquisitions are very complex processes. We have seen it try to work in corporates. It is not an easy process. One of the leading law firms in this country had to merge with one of the best legal entities in the world. The marriage could not work for 2 years. This merger could not work. Because in a merger, you have to ask yourself a fundamental question. What is the end product? Are you going to have a new university? If you say you want to merge Kenyatta with University of Nairobi, do you now end up with a university called University of Nairobi Metropolis? Or will it be called Nairobi plus KU? Or will KU be taken now so that it's acquired to become the University of Nairobi? These are conversations that happen in highly financial and investment procedures.
All right.
So, and I'm liking what the CS is doing, because at first when it was brought up, we thought it would be done in a rushed way. But I think the CS has now appreciated the magnitude and the enormity of midwifing and facilitating mergers and acquisitions. What we need to do is to have a more public engagement, do these kind of conversations for Kenyans to understand, why are we doing mergers? It is good for this country. Because President Uhuru Kenyatta has lifted university budgets.
Ideally, how long should it take? Ideally, yes. How should these mergers take? Ideally, what's the timeline? As much as
it depends with every context. You saw two banks recently merge.
All right.
How long did it take? So it is not something that you can cast on stone and say that we want in the next 6 months to have merged, because you are merging cultures, you are merging institutions, you are merging processes and the output that you want to see. So it's a complex process that you must allow some level of conversations to really happen, and that's what the public has to
Ladies and gentlemen,
appreciate.
our time is up, but we want to take closing remarks. I'll begin with Joseph.
30 seconds each.
Yes, thank you. I think from where I stand, that is from the youth perspective, the government is failing us, because there are so many courses. We have, a lot of us are graduating, but at the end, you meet a dead end. At times there are some of the courses you come out and realize there's nowhere you can attach yourself. There are so many courses that are not required. You'll find that you'll get, we graduated 68 of us, and you could get that in a class of agri-economics, maybe they graduated 18 candidates, graduates. And yet, the agricultural sector is more important to the economy. Now, again, the society should not just start blaming the graduates like, you're not doing enough. You know, you should start creating jobs. Don't look so much on employment. And you see, those people who are saying that, they are employed themselves.
They employ themselves.
They will tell you to, like, try, do business. You think of a business, you require a license. Like now in Nairobi, you require like 13,000 for a license. You require a license for having a fire extinguisher. You require a rent and deposit, and you realize you don't have money.
Goodwill.
You require goodwill. So what business are you going to do? So the government should just look at its people. More than half of the population is youth from the census.
Kevit, your closing comment?
I think that the government is making every effort towards addressing these issues of rules and regulation in the business environment to encourage more demand in terms of new enterprises through its efforts in increasing its position on the doing business indicators, capacities, and looking at all the issues with respect to taxation as well as starting up a business, and looking at specifically, you know, what outcomes are expected in order to encourage more enterprise. On the issue of education, it's absolutely critical that we realize that the efforts to date promote the inclusivity of all stakeholders to address aspects of quality and relevance. And it's primarily because it's a worldwide issue. You know, the issues of demand with respect to social demands, environmental demands, economic demands have to be inclusive to reform. And therefore, you know, it's absolutely critical that stakeholders are involved, that they do engage the process in a constructive way, and that they're part of the solution with respect to quality and relevance. And it's only then will we be able to achieve, you know, the satisfaction of transformation of the education reforms in this country.
Janet, because of time, allow me to skip you on this education comment, but I'll be right back on to you. Amos, your closing comment?
I totally want to really congratulate PS Kevit for the kind of work that he has done in Tibet. My only concern that we really now need, his successor needs to do, is how to massify Tibet so that it's providing large-scale solutions. When we talk of Germany has achieved 98% employment, what are those people doing? They are basically working in those Mercedes-Benz, making them. So they are basically doing that kazi ya mkono. That's what those Chinese are doing. So that when you go to these Dagoretti and people are making those vitandas, they are making vitandas for scale, making 5,000 that we can sell in Sudan, everywhere. So that we are making a Tibet that is capable of importing. It is not a Tibet that is highly subsistence. So that not everything around is going to look extremely imported as it is, because from everything that we have, even where we are seated, including what we are eating and everything, is almost imported. We must reverse that trend. And it can only be possible if we pick that lens when we are developing our Tibet. It is actually the way to go.
All right. So Janet is not only an educationist, but she's also the former CAC in Nairobi County. Janet, I wouldn't do justice by having you here without asking your thoughts on the current change that we saw yesterday on Article 187 with the Kenyan, functions of the Nairobi County government now being handed over to national. Could you speak on that?
Wow. I want to say this really, and it was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And many Nairobians have been saying that. And I think I really want to thank His Excellency the President for coming in now at this time to really try and rescue Nairobi, because really Nairobi is a seat of power. And I also want to thank the members of the County Assembly of Nairobi. Really, without them and without their support, a lot of these reforms really will not be possible. And a lot of whom have received this news with really a lot of relief. because really a lot of things were fixated, let me say that. But I think really moving forward, we want to really ask for support from all the institutions to just make sure that this works. It is surely not proper that we run Nairobi in the manner that it has been running for so many other reasons. You look at a child that wants to access good services and you sympathize with them, you go to Pumwani, you go to our hospitals, and you really ask Nairobi, where did we go wrong? But I think we really thank the president for this, and we want to ask all stakeholders to come on board and support. It is not too late. We can rescue Nairobi.
All right, that is Janet Owoko. She's an educationist and also former CSA in Nairobi County. We also had Amos Kaburu, an education expert and a program manager at PAL Network. Seated with us also was Joseph Njoge Maina, an applied mathematics graduate who is also currently doing his MBA in biostatistics, but also a hawker. Thank you so much for sharing your own personal story. That was very confident of you. And of course, Kevit Desai, the outgoing Tibet PS. Asante sana.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you as well for also your feedback and comment throughout the discussion. We are told we have so much feedback that we can go through all that. Up next is Workout Wednesday. Is it you or Kimani?
Kimani Mbogo.
Not you.
No.
So workout to
Hard
December, no.
pass. Me, I'll just wait to eat tomorrow.
Wow.
See you in a bit.